My name is Anita. Standing in the quiet of my living room, I'm surrounded by the aftermath of a long-fought battle. The house, once filled with tension and unspoken resentments, now stands still, a canvas waiting for a new story. The courier's envelope, with its bold notice of revocation of license to occupy, lies discarded on the floor, a testament to the end of an era. I remember the day the final mortgage payment cleared. It was supposed to be a moment of triumph. I walked into the house, the keys in my hand, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. For years, that mortgage had been like a shadow, following me everywhere. But now, it was over. I placed the keys on the kitchen table and took a deep breath, ready to embrace the silence of victory. Suddenly, the sharp click of heels on the tile broke the quiet. It was my mother, Evelyn. She had always been a force to be reckoned with a voice that could cut through steel. "Perfect," she said, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Now, hand over the keys. This house belongs to your sister, Bella." I stared at her, sure I had misheard. But there was Bella, in the living room, phone in hand, narrating a video tour for her followers. "And here's my new place," she chirped, panning across the walls I had painted late into the night after long days at work. I felt the room tilt. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, all seemed to evaporate in an instant. I wanted to shout, to tell them that every dollar I'd spent on this house was mine, that it stood because of my hard work. But my throat tightened, and no sound came out. I just stood there, frozen, under their smug glances. Evelyn tapped her fingers on the counter. "Don't make this dramatic. You've done your part. Now, let Bella live the life she deserves." Anger surged through me, but I forced my voice to be steady. I leaned forward, looked into my mother's eyes, and whispered, "Check your certified mail." For a moment, everything stopped. Bella laughed, as if I'd told a bad joke, and waved her phone around. But Evelyn's eyes narrowed. She knew me well enough to sense the weight behind my words. What she didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this day for months. It all started when Evelyn's finances took a nosedive. She was a proud woman, always insisting that everything was under control. But I saw the bills piling up on the counter, the late notices hidden under magazines. I was the one who stepped into the bank, signed my name on the mortgage papers, and agreed to pay $7,500 every month. I told myself it was just temporary, a bridge until she got back on her feet. But that temporary turned into years. I worked through countless nights, the glow of my laptop the only light in the house. I took on side projects, answered emails at dawn, and canceled vacations before they were even planned. My salary went towards the mortgage payments, and my side income was used for repairs and upgrades. I did it all quietly, believing that my silence was a form of love. But Evelyn twisted that silence. She told our neighbors and relatives that I was comfortable, that I didn't really have a heavy burden. My sacrifices became invisible, fuel for her story that I contributed less than I actually did. Bella, on the other hand, was always the golden child. When we were younger, Evelyn cheered for her every small victory. Whether it was a solo in a school play or a passing grade in math, Bella was celebrated. For me, the bar was always set higher. "Your time will come," Evelyn would say, patting my shoulder as if patience was a great prize. I believed her for far too long. Even our neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, noticed the unfairness. One day, she tilted her head as she saw Bella's car parked in my assigned spot. "Why do they always take your space?" she asked. I laughed it off, saying it didn't matter, but deep down, I knew it did. Every compromise, every quiet surrender, had taught them to take my sacrifices for granted. As I thought about it, I realized that Evelyn's demand for the keys wasn't a sudden idea. It had been in the works for years. Whenever Bella failed at one of her many ventures, an online clothing store that closed within months, a handmade jewelry stall that drained her credit cards, a fitness blog that she couldn't keep up with, Evelyn would rush to comfort her. She'd give her loans disguised as gifts, pay her rent quietly, and make excuses at family gatherings about how Bella was just too creative to be restricted. These rescues only made Bella more entitled. Why work hard for stability when it was always handed to her? I became the opposite: steady, unglamorous, and dependable. To Evelyn, my job as a software engineer was just invisible labor, while Bella's failed attempts were seen as signs of ambition. That night, sitting in the kitchen with the weight of their expectations pressing on me, I understood that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a moment of greed. It was a story they had written long before I signed the mortgage papers, and they truly believed I would follow their script. But I had a plan. Months ago, when Evelyn first hinted that the house should go to Bella once the mortgage was paid off, something inside me snapped. That night, after they went to bed, I opened my laptop and sent an email to Lucas Reed, a real estate attorney I'd met through a client. I told him I needed clarity and protection. Lucas was calm and methodical. He checked the title, and every line confirmed that the house was mine alone. He walked me through options that most people don't think about until it's too late: notices revoking informal occupancy, scheduled lock changes with civil standby, and protective orders if harassment crossed the line. At first, it felt extreme, almost paranoid. But every time Evelyn dropped another comment about Bella's future in the house, I knew I had to be cautious. We created a plan. The final mortgage payment would trigger the next steps. Documents were drafted, a locksmith was scheduled for the morning after the payoff, and an officer was notified in advance. Everything was set in motion quietly. So, when I whispered those 4 words to my mother, I wasn't bluffing. I was calling on months of careful preparation. Evelyn's smirk faltered, and her hand retreated from the keys. She tried to recover, but the tremor in her voice gave her away. Bella rolled her eyes, convinced I was bluffing. I let them believe what they wanted. By the next morning, they would know the truth. 2 nights later, Evelyn insisted on a family dinner. She called it a celebration, but I knew it was something else. The dining room was filled with aunts, uncles, and cousins, all drawn in by the promise of a big announcement. I sat quietly at the end of the table, watching as Evelyn lifted her glass with a practiced smile. To Bella, she declared, her voice ringing with pride. Tonight, we celebrate her new beginning in this beautiful home. Applause filled the room. Chairs scraped as people leaned in to hug Bella, their words overflowing with congratulations. I felt my fork slip in my hand. "This isn't Bella's house," I said, my voice clear and even. "I made every payment. The deed is in my name." The room fell silent for a moment before Evelyn's laugh cut through the quiet. "You see, always dramatic. Don't spoil the moment." Murmurs of agreement followed, and people looked at me with polite disapproval. Bella leaned back, smirking. "Relax, Anita. You can crash on someone's couch for a while. Maybe it'll be good for you." I didn't take the bait. Instead, I slipped my phone under the table, opened my email, and quickly typed. I attached photos of the title documents, mortgage receipts, and the draft notices Lucas had helped prepare. With a single click, the evidence was on its way to his inbox. Evelyn's voice rose again, painting me as ungrateful in front of the relatives. I watched her soak up their approval, not realizing that every word she said was another piece of proof against her. I didn't need to shout to be heard. The record spoke louder than I ever could. After the dinner, I stepped outside into the night air. The weight of their voices still pressed on my chest. I pulled out my phone, scrolled past unread messages, and tapped Lucas's number. He answered on the second ring, his tone steady as ever. "It's time," I said. He didn't need an explanation. We had rehearsed this moment many times. Within the hour, a courier was scheduled to deliver the notice of revocation of license to occupy. Every word of that document had been drafted weeks earlier, signed, notarized, and waiting for this day. I sat in my car outside the house, the dashboard glow lighting up the silence around me. For the first time in years, I took a full breath. I had spent so long bending to their expectations, shrinking myself to keep a peace that never really existed. Now, the balance was shifting, not with shouting or anger, but with signed papers and a single phone call. By midnight, Lucas texted, "Courier confirmed. Documents will be in their hands by morning." I read the message twice, steadying my breath. I wasn't the powerless daughter they thought I was. I was the one who had prepared, the one who had written my own ending. Dawn broke silently. There was no sound of dishes in the kitchen, no hum of the TV in the living room, no voices in the hall. I walked through the stillness of the house I had carried on my back for years and felt, for the first time, that it truly belonged to me. At the front door, the courier's envelope hung by a strip of tape. The bold words on the front were impossible to miss. Inside, by the entryway, I had already packed their belongings. Each duffel and box was neatly labeled Bella's clothes, Evelyn's trinkets, spare shoes, bathroom kits. I made sure nothing was tossed or broken, leaving no room for them to claim cruelty. When the locksmith's van pulled into the drive, an officer followed closely behind. They greeted me calmly, as if this was just another day at work. And in a way, it was. Locks changed, notices were delivered every day. Today just happened to be my day. Evelyn shuffled into the hall, her robe tied loosely, her face creased with sleep. She froze at the sight of the officer, then tore the envelope from the door. Her hands shook as she unfolded the pages, her eyes scanning the lines. I watched the color drain from her face as she understood. "You," she whispered, her voice cracking. I stepped closer, calm and quiet. "Check your certified mail." The words that were once a warning were now a fact. She clutched the paper, her lips moving as if to protest, but no sound came out. By the time the new locks clicked into place, the silence in the house no longer felt heavy. It felt clean, as if a long-standing burden had been lifted. By afternoon, Evelyn was on the phone with every relative she could reach. Her voice, trembling with outrage, carried through the walls as she painted me as ungrateful and cold. She repeated the same line to anyone who would listen, that I had stolen the house from under my sister. But the truth travels fast. Screenshots of my mortgage receipts, the title in my name, and the notices Lucas had prepared started to circulate among the family. One cousin messaged me directly, saying, "I didn't know you carried all of that by yourself." Another wrote, "She's been telling a very different story." Bella's fury arrived next. She stormed into the living room, waving the notice as if it would change if she shook it hard enough. "You promised me, Mom," she hissed, loud enough for me to hear from the hall. "You said this would be mine." Evelyn tried to hush her, but Bella's anger broke through years of careful shielding. Their alliance, which had once been so strong, bent and then snapped. As they shouted at each other, old betrayals came to light. I remembered the time Evelyn had used my savings account to cover one of Bella's failed ventures without asking, and the night Bella had listed the house online as an event space for her friends, leaving me to deal with strangers at the door. Every compromise I had made came rushing back, now undeniable as the walls echoed with their arguments. That evening, Mrs. Thompson stopped me by the mailbox. Her eyes were kind, and her words were simple. "It's not cruel," she said softly, "to lock a door that keeps stealing your sleep." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words sink deep into my chest. The house was quieter than it had ever been. In that silence, I started to rebuild. I painted the walls, replacing Evelyn's old floral wallpaper with a fresh coat of color. The scent of paint filled the air, replacing the heavy perfume that used to linger in the halls. Each brushstroke felt like a step towards reclaiming the space I had lost. I cleared the guest room and set up a studio for my work. My desk now faced the window, and sunlight spilled across the clean surfaces. The room no longer felt like a hiding place. It was mine, open and free. For the first time in years, I invited people in. Friends from work came over for tea, and their laughter filled the rooms. Mrs. Thompson joined us, bringing lemon cookies on a tray. She smiled as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. I laid out new rules: no guests without my consent, no filming or posting the house online. These rules were for me, a way to show that I would no longer let my silence be mistaken for permission. When Lucas stopped by to check on me, he looked at the changes and nodded. "A boundary is a contract you keep with yourself," he said. I knew then that these walls, freshly painted and filled with light, were more than just a shelter. They were the start of a new life, one that I had built on my own terms. But I knew the final test was still ahead. It didn't take long for Evelyn and Bella to come back. One afternoon, they showed up together, their smiles tight and their words polished. Evelyn spoke first, talking about the importance of family unity and how neighbors and relatives were misunderstanding the situation. Bella nodded along, but her eyes darted around the house, still looking for a piece she could claim. I listened without interrupting. Then, I laid my terms on the table, calm but firm. Therapy, both together and separately. An apology that acknowledged the years of harm, not just a superficial one. And most importantly, no more mention of the house title, ever. Their faces faltered. They had expected me to forgive and forget, to hand over my hard-won peace like it was nothing. But instead, I showed them a mirror. After they left, silence returned to the house. I gathered my papers and went to the notary, filing an estate plan that would protect the house's future. Driving home, I felt lighter. A house is just wood and walls, something that can be built, sold, or lost. But a home is different. It's a place where you stand up for your dignity, where you stop shrinking yourself. I locked the door that evening, watered the fern on the porch, and picked up my bag for work. Behind me, the house stood quiet, mine in more ways than a deed could ever prove.